Presentation before we take a break. I will now introduce Fiona Bradley and Patrick Danowski, who are the co-chairs of the IFLA Open Access Working Group. IFLA, no surprise, has been active in this space for quite some time. And the OA Working Group reporting to the board is the action agency for that. They're going to speak a little bit about the accomplishments of IFLA and probably also the ambitions. Fiona, Patrick, welcome.
Thanks a lot. Maybe we should start presentation mode again. Yes, okay.
Okay, where do we start?
Okay. We are.
We are. Good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here and to see so many colleagues and friends in person after all of these years. So my name's Fiona Bradley. In the IFLA context, I have been co-leading with Patrick, with Ellen Tyers, with Susan Riley and many colleagues, the Open Access Working Party over the last few years. I have also been a member of the FAVE Committee, the AI Special Interest Group, and I work at a university in Sydney, Australia.
Yes, and my name is Patrick Danowski. I'm a member of the professional committee for the last 2 years. Will be incoming chair of the Science and Technology Library section of IFLA. And I'm managing the library of the Institute of Science and Technology, short ISTA, in Klosterneuburg, Austria. Okay, and how this Open Access Working Group was created. So it was quite some time ago. I think it was even when I started my first IFLA conference. Ellen Tyers was president, and she has this theme, Access to Knowledge. And that was already when IFLA stated then its first, first open access stated a first open access statement, and then it was a little bit quiet around open access in IFLA. There was here and there, the sections were all working on that. I will not deny the work of the sections, but it was not that IFLA had a big strategy on open access. And then 2017, this process of the global vision started, and then there was the draft of the first strategy published. And open access was even not in sight. The word open was not mentioned in the strategy. And so we put up together in the background, together with Ellen Tyers, a resolution that this has to be changed, and that IFLA should focus on open access also in the strategy and advocate. And this we saw as a matter of urgency. That's why we brought it up in this General Assembly in 2018. And then the governing board agreed to have an open access working group, and really to also to review the statement that was already quite old at this time. And in 2022, we published a renewed statement. And yes.
So those are the actions that have been taken over the last few years. And why? Because we really saw and we recognised each of us have different roles in our own countries, our own regions. Many of us are involved in different initiatives. But what we could see was a gap and a space to bring together different parties at the global level to discuss where we agree on common ground and where we still need to work together to understand how different countries, different library systems also have different approaches to open access. So a very large part of that was to not revise the previous statement. And if you know, if you've been a participant in IFLA for a while, you know statements are very important because they're a way of bringing people together to talk about different concepts and ideas, and to have a tool that can be used for advocacy. So instead of a revision, we saw the opportunity for a fresh start to really update and reflect the years of change that had happened in open access and within IFLA itself over that previous decade. And we had also acknowledged that IFLA itself still had some work to do in regards to completing the transition of its own publications to open access. So many of you would have been familiar with the publication series, standards, professional reports, and the IFLA journal. And in a gradual transition, some of those, but not all of them, had been transitioned. So still some more work to do. So the real purpose of coming together under the IFLA umbrella and trying to make some progress after all these years was to highlight the importance of having not only regional, national, local voices, but also a global voice from the library profession, in the same way that many of the other stakeholders that we work with in this space have a very strong global voice, and to contribute the slightly different areas where IFLA has that voice in terms of intellectual freedom, equity and inclusion. And so what we'll mention later on is some of the work that we have done, and also all of the areas and the working groups and units that have been represented in this group. So what have we managed to do over the last couple of years? Well, of course, we had some delays, shall we say, because we have not been able to meet in person, apart from last year in Dublin. Some people met. I wasn't able to be there. But we have been meeting online quite regularly for a long time now. And actually, today is the first time we have met in person some of the people we have been working with so closely, which is fantastic. So we have produced the statement, and we have also been implementing the recommendations. We had another project which was to create a vocabulary of common open access terms, which Juan Miguel Palma has been leading. Thank you very much, with several other colleagues. And the intention of this project is that so often, even though we all work in libraries, we all have the same goal, sometimes even we don't share the same definition or understanding of some of the core things that we're talking about. So the intention is to try and bring that information together, and Juan Miguel will present some of that later today.
Yes, and as I thought, so we are also looking at our at IFLA's own publication. Certainly, there's the IFLA journal, and I must admit this is still some way to go. There's no easy solution for that, but we are working on it. We really have the goal to make the IFLA journal fully open access. And at the moment, there are only a few articles open access, and also with the IFLA book series, we have already all the next books will be open access. This is paid by the fund of the professional committee. So this, the book series will be open. All the new upcoming books will be open access from the beginning, and we will also look how we do the funding for that in future IFLA, so that the book series will continue to be open access. I think the standards are already in the IFLA library, so they are immediately published open access, so we are step by step going forward there, but I must admit the IFLA journals will be the most difficult. The reason is that because we got really good support from SAGE, and so that it's and so we have to see how we manage to do that on our own then. Okay.
So talking about the statement that was published last year, I hope you've all had a chance to read it. It is on the IFLA repository, but I just wanted to highlight here some of the points that we felt were unique. There have been many statements over the years about open access, the purpose of open access, and how we all want to achieve diversity, inclusion, bibliodiversity. But what did we highlight, particularly with the IFLA statement as well, is that we saw the need for a rights-based approach to open access as well, particularly when it concerns intellectual freedom. And this is very much drawn from the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, Article 19, the history of freedom of access of information committee, freedom of expression. in thinking about how do we also include these issues when we're talking about open access. So this is in reflection of issues that have come up around misinformation, the need for quality information to support decision-making and an informed citizenry. And this taps very much also into the work that has gone on around access to information in the SDGs and other forums. Of course, from the other side as well, there was discussion already this morning around how many people are excluded from access to information. And we also know in scholarly publishing that there is occasionally, even beyond the access model, there can at times be censorship in terms of who gets access to what.
Yeah, and the second one, so IFLA should be the global voice of all libraries. So we are at the situation, okay, there are different opinions, what is the right route to open access? And certainly we don't want to be the body who's saying there's only one right route, this is the way everybody has to go, because then we would always fighting against one of the sides. So we tried with this statement to be a little bit different and try to build an umbrella and saying, okay, we all have the same goal. We want open access for scientific information, and there are many routes, and all of them are okay, depending on what is locally the best way to approach this goal. There's certainly a but. And this brings me to the next point, because, there are also I come to that a little bit later, in some states there are now these transformative agreements, and they are fine on the local level, but we see these are creating certainly not equity, and we see that. So we are totally aware of that, and it was also for us to bring this into the statement. There may be for some states, it's maybe good to do that for a time, but be aware it's not the solution. So it's maybe for some of them it's a step forward, but it's not the solution where we should go through in the system. We should not accept that this is the final step in the system, because we should build a better system in the future. And this is a system that is also stressing the point of equity.
All right. So these are our ideas about where we're going from here. So like everybody else, we will do our plug for our upcoming sessions during the Congress. We have a session on Monday afternoon, and also a business meeting that will be open. All the details are on the program. You're very welcome to join us. We want to continue this work. So our working party formally ends here in Rotterdam this year. And our intention is to ask the governing board, or to propose to the governing board, that we continue with a more formalised structure. So at the moment, we're very ad hoc. We don't really have a presence, but what we want to do is now come under the formal structure in a very inclusive way, to have as many experts as possible from different units, different regions, to take part in this work. We think that this formalised structure, such as an advisory committee, would be focused on open access, of course, but also broader issues, bringing in open science, also terminology like open scholarship and open research are used in other countries, and equity. And this reflects also very much the UNESCO approach in terms of the open science recommendation, of which open access is one part. So yes, there is more work to do to reconcile different terminology, different orientations to open access, and the broader, bigger picture. And that's work that we hope to do together with all of you and other colleagues.
Yes, this is just a quick one. I will not read all the names. So we have really involvement from a lot of people, of a lot of standing committees, so representatives from really a lot, and we are very happy of that. And we are so open that everybody who's interested in the topic and want to contribute in the working group is welcome to. So thanks to all of them. And what we are saying is just built on their result. But we thought we don't want just to present what we are doing. We want maybe also bring up something up for discussions. And so we're starting, okay, what are the views from our areas of the world? Because there we have at least some overview, and maybe raising there already the conflicts that are, or the discussions that are arising, and then maybe open the floor for further discussions. So let's start with Europe, and there is not one view from Europe. It really depends where you go. So, and I would say, and tendentially in the Northern Europe, there are some exceptions. There's more the stronger support for transformative agreement and also strong support for the OR 2020 initiative. Just in general speaking, so it's states like the Netherlands, Germany, so there are quite a few of them. And France and Belgium, there's more the biodiversity approach, so it's more saying transformative agreements are not very good and they're not so strong supported. And tangential and in Southern Europe, there's also still a focus stronger on the green road, so self-archiving. It's quite few more and more funders in Europe are supporting the Coalition S. And saying immediate open access is necessary if you're getting funded by us. But certainly also the rights retention strategy, that is also part of the Coalition S, is also getting more and more investigated, especially in Great Britain. I heard recently it's getting stronger and stronger, so that the scientists at this point of submission should already say, okay, this paper is already under CC license if getting accepted, so that the publisher is even not getting all the rights. Just quickly said what is rights retention strategy. Situation in my own state in Austria, so we are really an early adopter of transformative agreements, one of the first transformative agreements were done in Austria. So we have around 15 at the moment on the consortial level, plus a lot of on the local level. For my institutions, that means we could reach in the last year all types of open access together. Around 90% of our scientific output is now open access available, green and gold road together. So not all was immediately open access, but I think this is already quite good. And the feedback from the scientists is, yes, this helps us to make open access more easy for them, so that it's getting easier for them to decide. They don't want to negotiate with the publisher. That is the feedback I'm getting. So rights retention, they have the fear that then the negotiation with the publisher is put on their shoulders, and this is something that at least my scientists are working in my institutions, and we are really international, that they don't like and that they fear a little bit that this is happening in the future. So also we had a little bit, we are not totally over it, but it's getting there. So the past conflict, different definition. What is open access? Is open access really only the immediately open access, or as people speaking also open access is after half a year, it's also fine. But is it really? Because in green, you have often embargoes. And so if you say this is also open access, it's still delayed. And so is it really the same? Question mark. Yeah, but there's in between more the common goal. Embargoes are not acceptable anymore, so zero embargo. And also in Europe, there are more initiatives to monitor the progress in open access in the different types of open access. And this may be the last thing. Data about how this is developing gets more and more important. People are really more interested into analyzing data and getting data about publication and normalized data. So there's a lot of discussion happening at the moment. And now I'm handing over to Australia.
So we have some things in common, but also many differences, and hopefully in the discussion, this will also highlight what we share and where we are different. So some of the things that have happened in the university sector are very important to the way research is being done in Australia. So we've recently had a review of how academic freedom is conducted in Australia, and I'm mentioning that specifically because of the link we're making and IFLA's work to intellectual freedom. And this was, the review was really to safeguard and defend academic freedom in all its forms. We have a process going on right now which is reviewing many of the arrangements around university funding and students and all of these issues, which is being called the Universities Accord. The various government departments, because we had a change of government last year, are also changing some of the priorities for funding and what are the really big issues that Australia wants to invest in. Turning to what we've done locally, though, we very recently had a workshop in partnership with OA 2020 with colleagues from Australia and the broader Pacific region in partnership with Open Access Australasia, which was a really excellent way to highlight some of the issues that are specific to the Asia-Pacific region. Some of those issues include the visibility of Australian research in global publishing systems. So thinking specifically here around a lot of the work that is being done in Australia is very global and collaborative, of course. But also there's a lot of research that is being produced on local issues, local history, local politics, these sorts of topics, law, that can be more difficult to make visible in the global publishing system. And there are also many really excellent discussions going on at the moment now about Indigenous data sovereignty and intellectual property when it comes to First Nations people. So some of the other key things here that are similar but also different from Europe in terms of commitment to a diversity of approaches, Australia in particular has always really invested in the sort of repository-based green open access, but this is shifting very quickly. So now we're looking at rights retention advocacy. And read and publish agreements are still very, very new for us. There's been a lot of consultation going on about where those are heading. We have quite a strong national group, Open Access Australasia. I'm on the committee for that group that helps to coordinate all of our activities. And very locally in my institution, we've adopted a open access policy that includes rights retention. And what we're having now is a great dialogue and discussion with other institutions that are also adopting the same thing. And lastly, we're also very active in open educational resources through national consortia. So lots of different initiatives, some similarities, some different.
Yeah, and now it's time for a little bit discussion, and we brought also some questions. So our questions for you is a little bit, what does it look for you? What are maybe key questions in your countries and your regions? What are your views? What can IFLA also do, maybe also to support the work in your regions and your countries? And how in all this diverse world we can maybe find a common ground. Thank you.
We can probably take a couple of minutes. I have one question. If you become an advisory committee, is that on the model of FAIF and CLM and that sort of thing?
And other options maybe becoming, because we just established a new structure in IFLA, what is not aware yet. We have now created, or that can be created now at the next conference, is networks, and this is the other options we are now looking at. That's maybe it can become a network, but some people want to make it on a higher level, and the advisory board would be on a higher level. So we are still discussing what is the structure with the governing board.
Why don't we take maybe 2 or 3 questions and then we'll take a short break.
Or comments. Maybe you have also answers for us.
Provocations.
Is it okay then?
Yeah.
Sorry? Oh, sorry. I didn't see you on the microphone. Yes, and then in front of you.
It's a question for you. I was thrilled to hear about the vocabulary you have created, and I've been searching the net for it. where can I access it? Because I think this is so important in order to avoid misunderstandings of OA in the future. So I'm really thrilled to learn about that you've done such a vocabulary.
I hope I get correct from the first row. It gets published soon, or soonish?
Well, in effect, it will be launched during the Congress. So we've been working with IFLA headquarters and the working group on how and when it will be launched. But I think Juan Miguel will also have more details to share later.
The vocabulary is a... Yeah, thank you. The good question. The vocabulary is a great resource, no? It's thinking about when you is in processes for do open access, no actions, no. It's a term. It's useful to do actions, and it's thinking with terms to support different actions in open access, no? In approaches in LIS, no? Mainly, because the resources about the open access is diverse, but this vocabulary has a excess central support performing of different actions about the openness movement. And this is work interesting because the vocabulary have the approach of different regions, no? From say Australia, Latin America, USA. What other region I don't remember yet, but this is multicultural, no? And this is the different approaches.
Okay, the draft will be published during the conference.
Yeah.
Maybe just as one more and then we'll break. Go ahead.
Actually, my name is Caroline Sutton. I'm with STM. And my comment was also about the glossary, because what's really interesting was we as STM, so we are an international association for publishers, and we have also needed to create a glossary. And so I think to myself, because we recognize that as we were talking to publishers in different parts of the world, we too were using these terms differently. And so I'm really eager to look at yours, compare with mine, because it also occurs, I mean, we need to also, as different stakeholders, be using the same concept approaches, or at least understand, you're understanding that word term to mean X. So thank you for doing that, and I'll share mine, and you'll share yours. And yeah, thank you.
So the STM is not, vocabulary is not published, right? So it's just an internal tool.
We were using it as an internal tool.
Okay.
Hearing you say you're published, I realized we need to, and it's not to keep it secret, it was, it emanated out of, we were doing some work with some colleagues in China to talk about the development of open access in China. And what you come to realize too is we all talk about these things from our own cultural perspective of we talk as if there's a transition and a trajectory that's the same around the world, but actually we're all coming from a different place with a different system, a different history. Latin America is completely different from Europe and North American publishing. And so it started from that project of realizing we needed to have some concepts and know we were talking the same. So we built it so we continually use the same. So anyway, this inspires me to make that also kind of a public document, and then we can compare. So thank you very much for inspiring me for that.
Okay, thank you both. Thank you for all the work you and your group do. We will take now about a 15-minute break, so come back at 10 minutes to 11 if we are allowed to. We are allowed to. Very good.